All right, welcome. Today, we're diving into a really compelling what if from Hollywood history. We're going to reimagine the fate of an absolute icon and ask what might have been. So, what if that story we all think we know just didn't end that night? We're going to step into a fictional narrative here, one that completely rewrites one of the most tragic nights of the 20th century. What would have happened if Marilyn Monroe had actually survived? Okay, before we go any further, I just want to be super clear about something. What we're unpacking today is a work of fiction. It's one author's reimagined history. Think of it like a thought experiment, but man, is it a fascinating one. So let's get into it. The doctor's obsession. In this story, the key figure, the person who could rewrite that fateful night, is Marilyn's own psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson. And it all comes down to a professional relationship that turned dangerously personal. So Greenson had this, well, let's call it a controversial method. He called it immersive therapy. And the whole idea was to blur those professional lines on purpose. He wanted to give Marilyn the stable family she'd never had by literally integrating her into his own family, with his wife, his kids, the whole shebang. And when we say the boundaries blurred, I mean, they were obliterated. We're talking sessions that went on for up to 5 hours, constant phone calls. She even lived with the Greenson family at times. And it gets even crazier. He supposedly used therapeutic intimacy to, assess her sexual condition. The lines didn't just blur, they completely vanished. So, what happened? Well, you can probably guess. Dr. Greenson fell for her, hard. But when he realized her affection was pointed towards the Kennedy brothers, not him, that professional jealousy it curdled into this possessive rage. The story goes he felt totally inadequate, and that led him to an absolutely chilling thought. If he could not have her, no one else will. Okay, so that brings us to the night of the attempt, a plan set in motion on August 6, 1962. Let's walk through how this story imagines it all went down. The deception was just so calculated. First, the dose. Dr. Greenson dissolves 30 Nembutal capsules, that's a lethal amount, into an enema bag. Then comes the lie. He tells the housekeeper, Eunice, that it's just a mild sedative to help Marilyn sleep. And finally, the instructions. Give it to her at 10:15 p.m. sharp. He was completely using her trust. But this is where the plan starts to fall apart. The housekeeper can't get in because Marilyn's door is locked, so Greenson has to show up and break in himself. And just look at this timeline of the crisis. At 11:40 p.m., everything changes when Bobby Kennedy and Peter Lawford show up at the house. Suddenly, it's a frantic race against time. So now we're at the turning point. A life in the balance. The discovery, the frantic race to save a star. And it's all because of this unexpected arrival. It completely changes the course of the night, and in this version of the story, the course of history. Kennedy and Lawford literally have to push past the housekeeper. They find Marilyn unconscious, the phone still clutched in her hand. Kennedy immediately asks if an ambulance has been called, and Greenson's response is just chilling. He says he wasn't sure if it was necessary. Can you imagine? So the attorney general just takes charge. He yells for an ambulance. And get this, it arrives in just 11 minutes. They rush her to Cedars-Sinai, and the paramedics are just working on her the entire way. It is an all-out effort to save her. And it was an absolute fight for her life. In the ER, her heart literally stopped. They had to shock it multiple times. But after hours of this intense battle, at 4:12 a.m., they did it. They revived her. She was taken off life support, and she was stable. In this timeline, Marilyn Monroe survived the night. So, she survives. But now what? A secret is kept. There are conflicting stories and a really difficult choice to be made. Because when the police start their investigation, the stories from the only 2 people there at the beginning, they just don't add up. So the police are left with a huge question. Who was telling the truth? You've got 2 witnesses, right? Dr. Greenson and the housekeeper, Eunice. And their accounts of what happened that night are polar opposites. Okay, so check this out. It's the doctor versus the housekeeper. Dr. Greenson's story
He says Eunice gave her the enema, and he arrived to find Marilyn already sedated. He claims the housekeeper got rid of the bag. But Eunice's story is completely different. She says Marilyn's door was locked. She never administered it. She claims he broke in, took the enema into the bedroom himself, and then he removed the receptacle. The key piece of evidence is just gone.
Well, eventually, the pressure from the district attorney's office was just too much. Dr. Greenson cracked. He confessed. He admitted he was the one who administered the lethal dose.
But here's where the story takes a really surprising turn. Marilyn herself chooses not to press charges. Why? Well, according to this account, her reasons were incredibly complex. She wanted to protect Dr. Greenson's family from a huge scandal. She actually felt pity for him, seeing it as a total emotional breakdown. But also, she wanted to avoid her affairs with the Kennedys going public. And maybe most of all, she wanted to hide her own embarrassment at being so completely duped by his so-called therapy.
And that one decision, to stay silent, it changes everything. It's not just about saving a man from prison. It completely reroutes her life, setting her up for a second act that nobody could have seen coming.
So first things first, she completely distanced herself from Dr. Greenson. I mean, done, forever. And in the wake of all that shared trauma, her bond with Attorney General Bobby Kennedy just deepened. They became closer than ever. And this new, deeper bond leads to the biggest event of her new life. In this fictional account, later that very same year, 1962, Marilyn Monroe gives birth to a son, fathered by Robert Kennedy. She finally became a mother, something she had wanted her whole life. And her son, Christopher, well, he grew up with the Kennedys as a kind of second family. Marilyn and Bobby remained the best of friends for the rest of their lives. In this story, she finally found that family she had always craved.
It's pretty incredible to think about, right? One decision changed everything. The history we know is all about tragedy and loss, but this version? It's about a choice. It just makes you wonder, how different would history be? How many ripples can one single different choice really make?